Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a truly fascinating paradox. We're going to unpack the incredibly complex mechanics of how power is actually shared in the world's largest democracy. We're going to explore the Indian constitutional framework to really understand how a country of such staggering scale manages to function day in and day out. So let me kick things off by posing the central paradox that we'll be exploring today. Think about this for a second. India is a nation with incredibly powerful states, right? Each one boasts distinct cultural, linguistic, and political identities. But at the exact same time, it has a central government in New Delhi that holds the legal authority to change a state's name or even redraw its borders overnight. So the big question we have to ask is, can a system like that really be called a federal country? Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our mental roadmap for navigating these concepts today. We're going to cover what a federal system actually is, India's unique model, its specific federal features, the strong central bias, and finally, cooperative federalism and the Supreme Court. All right, starting with Section 1. What is a federal system? The basics of shared power. You know, the English word federal comes from the word federation, which actually traces its roots all the way back to an old Latin term, foedus. Back when the Romans used it, it essentially meant a treaty, an alliance, or a formal agreement between various units. And in a modern political context, a federation is exactly that. It's a structural treaty dividing power between a primary national government and various regional or provincial governments. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to contrast it with the alternative. Political scientists generally divide governments into two main buckets. On one side, you've got the unitary system. Think of places like Britain, France, or China. In this setup, all the real power sits right at the top, with a single national government. Any regional power that exists, well, it's only there because the national government allows it. But on the flip side, you have the federal system, like the United States. In a federal system, a written constitution formally divides power so that both the center and the states can operate entirely independently in their respective spheres. Think of it kind of like a massive corporate merger. Without a binding legal contract, the larger, more powerful company could easily just strip the smaller one of its assets and completely take over its autonomy. In a political system, a supreme written constitution acts as that binding contract. It's the ultimate safeguard, ensuring the central government doesn't just absorb all the power from the regional states. Moving right along to Section 2, India's unique federal model, or forging a disintegrated union. When forming a federation, countries usually go down one of two paths. The first is the U.S. model, integration. This is where 13 independent, somewhat weak colonies decided to come together, pool their resources, and build a strong national center in Washington, D.C. The second path is the Canadian model, which is based on disintegration. Here, a strong center already existed, and it deliberately granted autonomy out to regional provinces. When India became independent, it chose that Canadian model. Given the absolute massive size of the country and its staggering sociocultural diversity, there's a famous proverb that says the taste of water changes every 12 coasts, the framers realized they needed a powerful center first to successfully hold together over 550 fragmented provinces. And this is a crucial point. India's states did not volunteer to form a country out of a mutual agreement. Dr. B.R. Amdegar explicitly defended calling India a union of states rather than a federation. He emphasized that the Indian Federation is not the result of an agreement, and because of that, absolutely no state has the right to secede. A state like Maharashtra can't just suddenly decide to pack up and leave simply because it has a high GDP. The union is entirely indestructible. All right, Section 3, India's federal features. Let's look at the constitutional checklists. The absolute most important federal feature on paper is the explicit division of powers, which is laid out in the 7th schedule of the Constitution. It divides responsibilities into 3 distinct lists. First, you have the Union list, which covers massive national issues like defense, foreign affairs, and currency, things that absolutely need uniformity across the entire country. Then, the State list covers localized, day-to-day issues like public order, agriculture, and health. Finally, there's the concurrent list. This contains subjects that both levels of government can legislate on. However, and this is a big however, if there's ever a conflict on a concurrent subject, the center's law always wins out. But wait, what happens when completely new things are invented that the framers back in 1947 couldn't possibly have imagined? Well, these are called residuary powers. In the US, any power not explicitly given to the center automatically defaults to the states. But in India, completely unforeseeable subjects. Think about regulating artificial intelligence or, setting up a colony on Mars. Those belong exclusively to the central government. We also see a really unique approach in the upper house of parliament, the Rajya Sabha, which represents the states. In a pure federation like the US, every single state gets equal representation. Exactly 2 senators, regardless of how big or small the state is. In India, though, state representation isn't equal at all. Seats are allocated strictly based on population size. So it ranges from just 1 single seat for a small state all the way up to 31 seats for a massive state like Uttar Pradesh. Which brings us to Section 4, the strong central bias, or the unitary tilt. You see, India's administrative and judicial systems are deeply, deeply intertwined and heavily center-leaning. Unlike the US, India has single citizenship. You aren't a citizen of your specific state, you're only a citizen of India. The top bureaucrats and police officers, the IAS and IPS, are recruited and trained by the center, even though they serve out in the states. The national auditor, the CAG, audits the financial books for both the center and the states. And there is one single integrated judiciary with the Supreme Court sitting at the absolute top, ensuring both central and state laws are upheld. Because of this massive constitutional tilt, political scientists have seriously struggled to define the Indian system. Casey Ware famously coined the term quasi-federal, basically meaning it's not completely federal, but it's sure not completely unitary either. Other scholars, like Morris Jones, have called it bargaining federalism. It is truly a one-of-a-kind mixed approach. Now, what's really interesting here is this concept of destructible states. While the Union of India cannot be broken, the individual states themselves, they certainly can be. The central parliament can literally redraw the map of India, merging states, splitting them up, altering boundaries, or changing their names, using just a simple majority vote. And the kicker? They can do this even if the state in question completely disagrees. They don't have a veto. Finally, Section 5, Cooperative Federalism and the Supreme Court, the balancing act in action. The absolute climax of these center-state legal battles came in the landmark S.R. Bommai case back in 1994. It involved a state governor recommending that the center impose president's rule, which, if you don't know, effectively dissolves the state government machinery. After the High Court dismissed Bommai's petition, the Supreme Court stepped in, and they delivered this historic ruling that decisively protected the federal structure from arbitrary central overreach. They basically declared that federalism is a basic feature of the Indian Constitution. The Supreme Court firmly asserted that states have their very own independent constitutional existence. They stated emphatically that states are absolutely not mere appendages or satellites just acting as administrative branches of New Delhi. While the center can override states during a severe national emergency, the court made it crystal clear that these emergency provisions are the rare exception, definitely not the daily rule. To describe this daily, delicate dance, the scholar Granville Austin used the term cooperative federalism. The system is uniquely designed so that, despite the center's ultimate supremacy on paper, both levels of government must continuously cooperate, negotiate, and bargain to actually resolve common problems effectively. And honestly, we see this dynamic playing out in the real world constantly. You'll often see news about border disputes, right? Like the ongoing friction between Maharashtra and Karnataka over the Belagavi region, or river water conflicts, like the intense Kaveri dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. And of course, there are constant, ongoing negotiations over financial grants and GST compensation. But it's so important to remember, these aren't failures of the system. These are the natural, everyday expressions of regional aspirations. It's federalism actively working exactly as intended. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder. As India's economy expands and regional political aspirations continue to grow, how will this incredibly delicate balance of cooperative federalism evolve in the coming decades? I highly encourage you to keep these constitutional principles in the back of your mind the next time you read about a center-state political clash in the news. It will absolutely change how you view the story. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.